So that kind of thing is the kind of thing that we help people rewire in their brain so that when a guy acts the way their father did, they don't respond the way that they did with their father because that's natural. That's automatic, not just they have to like white knuckle their way to not freak out about it. They just don't. And so I think that's why I'm so passionate about this because I don't think people want to pop pills every day in order to feel okay. I don't think people want to have to meditate for an hour and a half every day to feel okay. I think people want tools that actually produce healing so that they can then go about having more freedom in their lives again.
Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. Today I have on the show Dr. Cureton, and she is a licensed naturopathic physician, acupuncturist, and a neuroplasticity practitioner. And that is what we're talking about today. She has kind of moved from just kind of the general naturopathic work into specifically working with neuroplasticity. And if that sounds like a bunch of like mumbo jumbo, or I'm speaking like a different language, just be patient because she's going to explain all of it. But she is diving into, and this is another one of those episodes where I can nerd out on this all day, but she really does break it down for like easy understanding and implementation. But she talks about neuroplasticity and what this has to do with our chronic anxiety and really just chronic disease. She has her own health journey, and she talks about, number of things that she was plagued with that she really, she tried all the functional methods and she tried all the holistic things. And it wasn't until she started using this neuroplasticity that she really saw the body start to heal. And so we talk about kind of the downsides of traditional approaches to dealing with things like anxiety and panic attacks and things that kind of have this mental emotional root cause. And even we talk about chronic disease, autoimmunity, and some of the things she was diagnosed with, and how the neuroplasticity really is the key to kind of unlocking the healing equation, if you will. A lot of really fascinating science behind all of this. And she's going to just get down to the nitty gritty and explain how it all works. So let's jump in. All right, y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Dr. Karen. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Karen.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. So if you can give us just kind of the brief lowdown on what you do and kind of the main areas you work with as a naturopathic physician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm a naturopathic physician and acupuncturist in terms of my licensing, but I have found a very unconventional path within those worlds. And I now work as a neuroplasticity practitioner, which means that I help people rewire their brain to get well. And the connection there is really that, in the brain, we have this stress center that really is responsible for all of our stress responses, our emotional responses, our survival responses, like fight, flight, and freeze, right? Which most people have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that part of the brain can basically get wired up such that it responds with stress signaling to the rest of the body too much of the time. And that derails health dramatically. So yeah, I got down that road, both for my patients and for myself. My journey was also with complex chronic illness, and those are the same people I was trying to help in my practice. So I eventually realized, oh, wow, a big percentage of people with chronic health issues have trauma, have, histories of intense chronic stress over extended periods of time, or they have stress patterning. They're running day in and day out, which was definitely me too. The massive overachiever and, way overly empathic and all kinds of other things that were keeping me stressed. So that's why I do what I do now, because rewiring my brain was so incredibly profound for my health that I realized, whoa, a lot more people really, really need this. And nobody's taking it seriously because doctors are not the ones promoting it.
Right.
Right. And so I was like, I'm going to be one of those people that goes out on a limb and says, hey, guys, this new thing based on neuroscience is way better than what you've experienced before in
Right.
terms of mental health therapies. You got to try it. I mean, it's that good that I left my medical practice to do that full time.
Wow, that's crazy. So because you have your own journey with, like you said, complex chronic illness and a bunch of other things. And so how did you find, because I mean, assuming you tried other modalities, right, to help you heal yourself. So how do you find the biggest differences between, and even like, holistic modalities? I mean, as a naturopathic physician, that's what you do, right? I mean, so how do you find this, like working on the neuroplasticity side? Like, how does that compare to other traditional modalities that, could be helpful, but aren't necessarily completing the healing process?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way to put it, actually, is that, there are many tools we have in our toolbox that really work like Band-Aids, right? They give people relief, but the relief is temporary and it's not actually healing the root issue, right? And so that means they have to constantly manage whatever it is. And in the realm of that I work, that means they're constantly managing anxiety, depression, trauma reactions, and physical health symptoms, right? So yeah, that's my journey with that, was that I also had all kinds of major chronic health issues and, chronic infections, Lyme, mold illness, all these things, mitochondrial dysfunction, et cetera, et cetera. List just goes on. And I was able to reverse almost all of it. And that happened largely through neuroplasticity. So the difference, I think, really, leading up to that, I had tried a lot of things, both on the mental and emotional side of the spectrum, like talk therapy and meditation and yoga, things that most people are going to gravitate towards first. And ultimately, like many other people, I found that I didn't get very quick relief through meditation, that I was one of those people that had to sit there for like an hour and a half to get any kind of relief, and so that's just not really practical. And, I felt that way for my patients too. The other thing, though, is that meditation and yoga actually are working to some degree like Band-Aids in my mind. The reason is because they can't actually change the neural connections in the part of the brain where they need to be changed for your stress programs to stop playing on repeat. Basically, we have stress programs that play on autopilot, just like we have a program that plays on autopilot when we drive. And so we don't think about driving. We have the same thing in terms of our emotional reactions. And so a lot of people don't realize, like, oh, my response just now was absolutely determined based on what I've been through in my past. And somebody else would not have had that response.
Right.
So what I find is, and my business partner was actually a devout meditator very seriously for 20 years, and she never got regulated that way. And she also never stopped some of her stress programming that, like, I'll just give you an example, right? So for her, she had some issues with her father. I think her father was not the nicest, pretty disrespectful, a lot of hurts, I think, in childhood. And those hurts, carried forward into her adulthood and played out in relationships in her life. Right. And we see that all the time. So that kind of thing is the kind of thing that we help people rewire in their brain, so that when a guy acts the way their father did, they don't respond the way that they did with their father, because that's natural. That's automatic, not just they have to like white knuckle their way to not freak out about it.
Right.
They just don't. And so I think that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I don't think people want to pop pills every day in order to feel okay. I don't think people want to have to meditate for an hour and a half every day to feel okay.
Right.
I think people want tools that actually produce a healing so that they can then go about having more freedom in their lives again. And so that's what this can actually achieve. And that I like to compare it as well to my naturopathic tools. I have all these herbs and I have nutraceuticals and I have homeopathy homeopathy and all this other stuff. And those tools are great, but they are definitely not perfect when it comes to mental health
Right.
and the connection that that has to physical health.
Mm-hmm.
Herbs really, really do work like Band-Aids when you're
Right.
using them for mental health.
Right. Yeah. Well, it ends
So
up being like a pill for an ill thing, just like if you were taking a prescription drug, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think people are tired of that. In the beginning,
Mhm.
they were like, this is great. I don't have to have all these side effects from the medication. And that is great. I'm so glad we have those tools.
Yeah.
But in the long run, people, would ask me like, oh my God, thank you. I have so much relief. But when can I get off of that?
Yeah, exactly. So what is when you're talking about neuroplasticity, can you just talk more about the kind of what and how that works and like what you're doing in this process?
Yeah. So, like I was saying, our experiences in life basically create, the wiring in the limbic system, right? The
Mm-hmm.
way that the neurons are connected and the way that they tend to fire, right? Which produces your emotional responses, survival responses, and downstream behaviors from that, right? Because emotional states are very motivating,
That's
which was
true.
why commercials are all playing on your emotions on,
Totally.
So yeah, so with the neuroplasticity techniques, we literally are changing the neural connections in that part of the brain, which is so cool. But the way that we do that, we have learned based on neuroscience, is really the way that the brain does it naturally anyway. So we have this process comes out of the psychology world and the research world called memory reconsolidation. So, what it means is every time you remember one of your memories, it changes a little bit naturally
Mhm.
based on whatever's going on in that moment. Right. And so that means that over time, if you recall a memory regularly, it's likely to change quite a bit, which is why some people will, when they recall their memories, go, oh, yeah, it's actually in black and white or it's in third
Mhm.
person. And so we can actually hack that process of memory reconsolidation. And that's what we do with the techniques that we use. So basically, the way that you hack it is if somebody, let's say somebody's having really struggles with perfectionism, right?
Mhm.
It's pretty easy to trigger someone's perfectionist patterning, right? All you have to do is have them think about doing something that they care a lot about, the
Mhm.
outcome of, and then boom, their anxiety and everything related to their perfectionism just starts blooming inside
Mhm.
them, right? So once that happens, we know the neural network for producing that in the brain is active. And that's what has to happen for us to be able to make changes in it. I like to think of neural networks like Word documents, that we have to open the document if we want to make any changes.
Mhm.
And so that's a principle of neurology that's become really well established at this point. So once the neurology is all active, how do you make the changes? Well, there's a variety of techniques for harnessing memory reconsolidation. So people are making changes in many different ways, depending on the therapy they're trained in. But
Mhm.
some approaches to memory reconsolidation work a lot better than others. And so we're just getting better and better and better at these techniques. So at this point, we like to use often a process of what we call a pattern interrupt combined with memory reconsolidation, which basically means when somebody's feeling all the stress feels related to a program they want to change in the brain,
Mhm.
we then purposefully introduce data of safety through both mind and body at the same time.
Mhm.
So that means something different for each person because for each of us, we feel really good and really safe with different things.
Right.
Right. So one person may have felt amazing at grandma's house as a kid because it was the safest, coolest place ever. And another kid felt totally traumatized by grandma's house.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we need to use what works for that person. And so sometimes we will use visualizations of memories that felt really good and safe, or we might use future visualizations or even fictitious visualizations. Actually, metaphors work really, really well for changing things in the limbic system.
Mhm.
And we can also, like I was saying, do things through the body. So oftentimes we're doing things that feel very good and very safe in the body, like just, giving yourself a self massage, like Certain techniques will have you sort of caress your body or do tapping, or, there's a lot of different ways you can do it through body as well, and through auditory mechanisms. So some people, that's their primary sense they tend to lean towards. And for those people, using things like music and funny sounds and stuff like that will be really, really effective, actually. So at this point, a lot of people ask me, well, is that really different from me going and watching Netflix when I'm really stressed out? And I'm like, it is different. And I'll explain how it's different. So, when you're going to watch Netflix, one of the things that is happening oftentimes is you're not focusing your full attention often on the movie or the show, right? So oftentimes your attention will be bouncing back and forth between what you're stressed out about and the movie or the show, right? So when that is happening, you're not actually getting a complete interrupt. So basically, you're not sending a complete signal of safety. It's kind of a mixed signal, right? Because you're thinking stressful things while you're also doing these things that are supposed to feel safe.
Right.
So that's that. But then the other thing is that the brain learns everything with repetition. Right. And so that would mean, in order for that to produce significant changes in a neural network for you, you would have to repeat that over and over and over again. And each time you watch the Netflix movie, it would need to make you feel very safe very quickly. So yeah, we typically do it with people in that way, where we're using a pattern interrupt and we're doing a little bounce back and forth. We're going to the stressful thing, triggering the activation of that neural network, and going to the safe thing, and then going to the triggering thing, and then the safe thing. And it sounds incredibly simplistic, and on some level it is actually, but it produces these very sophisticated results that we have not seen for many other modalities. So even though it's kind of sounds silly and weird, it actually produces the best results and is a lot of fun.
No, it makes total sense. So because you're talking about repetition. So when people are coming to you, and let's just say they're dealing with anxiety or panic attacks or something like that. Anxiety is on top of mind because I was talking with somebody about it earlier. How much repetition are we doing? Is this they have to come to multiple sessions? Is this over a 6-month period? How long is it? And I'm sure everybody's different. So, taking that into account, generally speaking, is there a time frame where okay, now we really are rewiring things?
Yeah. I mean, you can start rewiring things immediately and you will see the effects immediately, actually, but those effects will be cumulative, right? If you think about the average person, we have a lot of different stress programs. We all have a lot of different triggers because we've lived a lot of time. And that's just what happens when you're on this planet and you have life experiences.
Right.
So, some people have more difficult ones than others, and those are the people that tend to get the most dysregulated and have more health problems, as the research shows, right?
Right.
So with anxiety or depression or any other, person that's very dysregulated, like anxiety and depression are very clear signs of nervous system dysregulation, and people didn't know that. But also, there are a lot of different types of physical conditions that point in that direction, like chronic pain and IBS and chronic pelvic dysfunction and discomfort, all kinds of things, POTS, all kinds of stuff. So with the people that are the sickest, it's going to take them somewhere in the neighborhood of a year to rewire everything they want to rewire. But all along that process, they're going to be feeling better and better and better. It's not like they have to wait a year,
Right.
You see the results and they build cumulatively the whole time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For people that are not quite as sick, like as an example, we had somebody join our program who really just had a lot of stress and migraines. Somebody like that is going to get relief very fast. Like usually the migraines or insomnia, I think those are the top two that stop really fast. Like usually we hear people say within a week.
Yeah.
They stopped having migraines. Yeah. And insomnia. Yeah. So obviously that, goes a long way towards the rest of their healing if they're sleeping better. But that's what people can typically expect. And another timeline I like to share with people, because it's going to blow their mind, but it's very, very real and very true, is that if you have a trauma that you're still struggling with that plays out in your life in some way, you can rewire that typically anywhere between 1 and 3 sessions, even if it's a very big T trauma. Little T traumas, like I often rewire with somebody like 5 to 8 per session.
Yeah. Little
So
leaving at a time, 5 to 8 little traumas at a time. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, smaller traumas, exactly. And so it's super fast if you are working on things like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. So with chronic illness, I'm just thinking like, okay, chronic illness. And a lot of times, like you mentioned before, people dealing with chronic illness, they've had these traumas in their life, right? So with people who are coming to you, and I mean, I'm thinking about you too. You listed this whole long list of things you were dealing with, right? And if, the root cause of those things for people are, whether it's accumulation of little T traumas or big trauma, whatever it is. And, so many times those things are repressed, right? Our body's trying to protect ourselves and we can't put our finger on it or we can't really bring back that. So how do you work with people like that where it's like you don't even really know where the pattern came from or maybe even what the pattern is because it's like these suppressed things, repressed things?
Yeah, absolutely. The cool thing with the approach that we take is that you don't always have to know. It helps. If somebody does know, then it's great to go right to the source and rewire that. But you can also work with what you do know and you can rewire at that level. So I had a woman not long ago who had been having panic attacks, and she didn't know why. They were always in a certain situation, but she didn't have a trauma in that situation. So she didn't know why her brain felt so unsafe there.
Right.
So we didn't have any kind of source to go for, like a trauma, but we just rewired what she knew, which is that when she would walk into Costco, she would have a full-on panic attack. And so what I did with her was I just had her close her eyes and imagine she was walking into Costco and she would start to get anxious. And then we would do the techniques of rewiring. And so at the end of 5 minutes, she was able to do that and go, yeah, I don't feel any anxiety when I think about walking into Costco. And then I gave her a little homework. She went to Costco the next day and was like, yeah, I didn't have a panic attack. I haven't had one since.
That's crazy.
So sometimes the surface stuff is enough.
Right.
And with memory, a lot of people think that memory is primarily visual. And for many people it is, but in certain situations it's not. And oftentimes when very early childhood, when we're pre-verbal, that memories are not very visual or very auditory. They're actually primarily just felt sense.
In the body, yeah.
And so we can work with just felt sense. I was working with a woman the other day who was like, I had this felt sense that I was, assaulted in some way as a very young person, and I just don't have any memory of it other than this really yucky feeling. And we still were able to rewire that inside of her. And it's lasted. She's like, I haven't had that sort of crop up in my life, like, in intimate situations or anything. So,
yeah, that's crazy. So do you find when you're rewiring things, is it like once it's done, it's done? Does it creep back up? And then if it does creep back up, does that mean that we really didn't get to the root cause of the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, generally, like with rewiring a memory, something like that, it usually sticks completely unless we did not get to the deepest layer, like you're saying. So sometimes we'll work with somebody or they'll be working on their own to rewire something and they'll get through a layer of it and they think they're done, but then they're in their dreams or the next day, like their brain will start to give them signs. You're not done. Here's some more for you. And so sometimes you do have to rewire in layers. So we definitely coach people about that. But the other thing is that sometimes, when you're working on the roots, I call the beliefs and memories to be the roots of the patterning, right? Really the thing that started the pattern in the first place. But then once you've had those experiences and you've got those belief systems, now you are running the pattern regularly, right? The stress pattern. Let's say it's perfectionism. So you've got this huge perfectionist tree that has grown out of these roots. And that is really what represents the neural habit. So sometimes people need to rewire at the root level, and then they need to break down the trunk and branches. Sometimes just doing the roots will do everything they need. If the tree is not enormous, oftentimes that's the case. But if the tree is enormous, like they've been anxious since they were 5 years old and they're 70 years old, Yeah, they're going to need a little bit more time to break down that habit,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's that stage sometimes that is needed, but once it fully rewires, we don't tend to see people regress unless they have very new different challenges crop up in their lives, right? So
Mhm.
they like stop doing the work and then suddenly boom, divorce hits them across
Mm.
the face and
Mhm.
they go right back into dysregulation because that's scary. It's new.
Yeah.
They have not made peace with it or had a
Right.
chance to, right? So, with things like that, oftentimes people need to revisit the work. But we like to think of this as like, yeah, these are self care tools that you can use at any point in life with
Mhm.
whatever life throws your way so that you don't end up traumatized and more dysfunctional over time.
Right, right. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question because I was going to ask if there's, like you mentioned, giving your patients homework when they leave, right? So, are there things that people can do that aren't necessarily doing like these one on one sessions or whatever? Things that they can do, practices that they can implement that are helping to rewire the brain?
Yeah, that's great. Actually, people can do the majority of the work on their own. And we suggest that you do because it's incredibly empowering to get really good at these skills
Hmm.
because then you know you can handle practically anything that comes your way in life
Right.
and you can keep yourself healthy.
Hmm.
Right. So we actually have created, me and two other expert brain trainers, a brain training program, which is a group program online called Wired for Wellness. So in that program, we've got like a ton of educational content, which is really, really important if you are going to be rewiring your brain on your own. There are
Right.
just a lot of things you're not going to know. It's like learning a new language. It's this whole other realm of
Hmm.
reality that most people have not experienced. So we do a lot of education first, and then, there are a bunch of recorded guided processes in there that people can just press play and follow along with.
Hmm.
So they don't have to try to self-generate their neural retraining
Right.
practice. They can just push play and follow along. And a lot of those are geared towards different kinds of stress patterns people might be dealing with. So we've got, processes in there for insomnia and for perfectionism and for anger issues and
Hmm.
people that are struggling with immense grief and all kinds of things that dysregulate us. So most of what our clients are rewiring now, they're doing in a self-care way. They're doing it with the
Wow.
tools in Wired for Wellness. And
Hmm.
that's actually the most effective way because like I said, your brain needs repetitions and
Hmm.
it needs repetitions when the neural networking is active. So it's going to be most active usually in your day-to-day life, right?
Right.
Life's going to trigger you. And
Hmm.
so that's in those moments, it's a really, really good time to be able to introduce new data into that neural network and teach your brain to do something different. So
Right.
we actually only work with people if they are willing to do that self-care work at this
Hmm.
point,
Hmm.
along with one-on-ones if they end up wanting those.
Yeah.
Some people do not need one-on-ones. So typically we think of one-on-ones as being really most essential for people with big T trauma
Hmm.
or really sticky patterning that they cannot see their way out of,
Yeah.
right? Like they're struggling with some really intense obsessive compulsive patterning or
Hmm.
something like that. They may need some help with something that strong.
Right.
But most of what our clients need to rewire, they can do on their own. And
Yeah.
we feel really good about that. We are all about self empowerment.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Yeah, for sure. Can you give some examples of some of the things that people might find most helpful, like practices that they can implement on their own?
yeah. So the practices, we actually put out a bunch of free processes for people to try neural retraining because we know most people have no idea what that is, what
Yeah.
the experience is like, and they want to know, is this actually going to work for me? Right. So those processes are out there for you to find out all those things.
Hmm.
You can go to getwiredforwellness.com/free or getwiredforwellness.com/anxiety. There are actually two free programs. One's anxiety, panic attack, and phobia focused. It's
Mm.
designed to help you learn how you can stop all those conditions by rewiring your brain. And there's two free processes in there. And then the other one's more general. And it's really made for people who are struggling both with dysregulation, i.e., usually anxiety, depression, and bad mood in a variety of other ways. And
Hmm.
also chronic health conditions. So that one really explains the connection between the two
Right.
and how you can get well on all levels,
Right.
using
Right.
these tools. And there's 6 free processes there.
Okay.
So I
Awesome.
find it easier to just point people towards that to try it as opposed
Yeah.
to trying to explain it.
Explain
So
it all. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That
So
makes sense.
hopefully that helps people get a sense of whether it's right for them.
Yeah, perfect. And of course, we'll put the links to that, y'all, in the show notes. Y'all can go check that out when you get done listening. Do you have any, as we kind of start to wrap up, do you have any like strategies or tips for people as they're kind of getting started with rewiring their brain? Any kind of last minute things you might want people to know as they're jumping into the process?
Yeah, I would just say that, you think of it like a process. While it is dramatically faster than talk therapy or probably any other mental health approach you've ever tried, it still takes some time,
Right.
right? Because your brain needs to learn through repetition. So just keep that in mind when you start. When you use those processes, you're going to get immediate relief. But that immediate relief is going to be temporary in the beginning until your brain forms a new habit. Right. And so just know that that's normal and that the more you put in time with processes working on that, the less that will come back. And
Mm.
progressively over time, it will just start to fade into the background and go away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how the journey typically goes. And it's also not linear, right? Sometimes people will be doing great and making all this progress, and then suddenly they'll get really triggered by something and they'll backslide a little bit, right?
Right.
And then they'll just need to keep going. And sometimes it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But in the end, everybody's like, oh my God, that was so worth it. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
completely different person. I can't
Yeah.
imagine what would have happened if I had not had done this.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, and I think that's good advice for no matter what modality you're using to heal yourself, it's never a linear process. I mean, life is not a linear process. So I think that's
Yes.
good to remember that, just because you don't see the forward progress every day doesn't mean it's not happening. So I think that's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have one more question that I want to ask you, but before I ask you that, can you let everybody know? I know you gave the links to kind of the practices and stuff, but let everybody know where else they can find out more about you and what you're doing and getting started with all of this.
Yeah, I think that the best place to find more information if you want more help, support, community is to go to the main Wired for Wellness website, which is just getwiredforwellness.com. And at that website, you will be able to learn all about our full paid program if you are wanting that increased support, right? You can accomplish a ton with the free program, and we're getting responses from people that they are. So if you don't feel you need that and you want to DIY it the whole way, please have at it. That's what the free programs are for. But if you really want help and somebody to do it with you, that's what the paid program is for.
Yeah, perfect. And I will put all that in the show notes so y'all can go check it out and download all the things. So it's so good. So many amazing free resources. I'm excited about that. Okay.
Yay.
The last question I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from my perspective, which is going to sound very biased, but I think it is actually to be regulated. And the reason I say that is because I have had really long periods in my life of dysregulation. And during those periods, I have either felt so scattered that I couldn't really be very effective with my purpose.
Right.
Or if I was in freeze, then I was just so tired and lethargic and unmotivated that I didn't accomplish a whole lot. So really, if you want to be productive with your purpose in life, if you even want to be able to connect to your purpose, you need to be regulated. Creativity and that sort of alpha brainwave state where we can really sort of see things big picture and connect deeply to ourselves. That doesn't happen in a state of dysregulation. It doesn't happen in fight, flight, or freeze. And so, yeah, I think that for me, that has been the most effective thing for keeping me connected to that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. And I think, like you said, kind of at the beginning, it's people aren't talking about it enough, and it's not something that's like at the forefront. And I totally agree with you. And that's makes total sense. So I love that answer. Such a good answer. Thank you so much, Dr. Karen, for joining us and sharing all of this and all your free resources and everything you're doing to really help people heal. So thank you.
Thank you. It was so much fun. And I hope this really helps a lot of people.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's @TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.